The 2026 World Cup will be the largest in the history of the sport by a wide margin. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities, 3 countries. That is roughly 50% more football than the last World Cup in Qatar. Officially, FIFA expanded it to grow the global game. In the next 12 minutes, I will show you the real reason. And it is written in dollars, not goals. First, the scale of the change. The World Cup used to be 32 teams and 64 matches. For decades, that was the format. In 2026, it jumps to 48 teams and 104 matches. That is 40 extra games, 16 extra national teams, and a tournament stretched across an entire continent. FIFA's public reason is inclusion. More teams means more countries get to participate on the biggest stage, which spreads the game to new markets and new fans. And that is genuinely part of it. Growing the sport in new regions is real strategy, but it is not the whole story. Here is the part the press releases skip. Every single extra match is a new product to sell. A new broadcast window with its own advertising. A new gate of ticket sales. A new set of sponsor activations. 40 extra games is 40 extra revenue events. The tournament did not just get bigger, the store got bigger. Look at what that does to the broadcasting line. More matches mean more inventory for networks and streamers to buy and fill with ads. That is a major reason broadcast rights are now worth close to $4 billion, FIFA's single largest source of income. Look at what it does to tickets. More matches mean more seats to sell, in more cities, to more fans. Ticket and hospitality revenue is projected around $3 billion in 2026, more than triple the Qatar figure. Expansion is a direct lever on that number. And look at what it does to sponsorship. A bigger tournament in the world's largest advertising market, the United States, is worth more to brands. Sponsorship is projected around $1.8 billion. The bigger the stage, the bigger the check. So from FIFA's side, expansion is close to pure upside. More games, more revenue, more reach. And the costs of staging those extra matches fall mostly on someone else. Which brings us to the other side of the equation. For host cities, a bigger World Cup means a bigger bill. More matches require more stadiums brought up to FIFA standard. Over $1.5 billion in upgrades across 16 venues. More fans require more security. FEMA alone committed $625 million in the United States. More cities also means more logistical complexity, and complexity always costs money. 16 host cities across 3 countries, separated by thousands of miles, all operating on one schedule. Teams and fans flying constantly between them. Every added match adds friction, and friction has a price. There is also a quality question that fans care about. More teams can mean more mismatches in the group stage. Lopsided games that exist mainly to fill the calendar. Critics argue the expansion dilutes the sporting product even as it inflates the commercial one. That tension sits at the heart of the modern World Cup. But from a business standpoint, dilution barely matters. A blowout still sells broadcast ads. A half-empty group game still counts toward the ticket total. The financial logic of expansion does not depend on every match being a classic. It depends on every match existing. This is the pattern to watch across all of modern sport. Leagues and tournaments keep adding games, teams, and rounds. Every edition is framed as a gift to the fans. Almost every edition is, underneath, a new unit of inventory to monetize. The 2026 World Cup is simply the clearest example yet. So when someone tells you this is the biggest World Cup ever for the fans, hold that up to the light. It is the biggest World Cup ever, full stop. And the biggest reason it got that big is not on the pitch. It is on the balance sheet. 48 teams, 104 matches, and one very clear motive. Bigger isn't about the sport. It is about the spreadsheet. Understand that, and every future expansion announcement will read very differently. If this was useful, subscribe. And at Valventus.com, we help e-commerce brands actually use AI to sell more. To appreciate how radical the 2026 expansion is, look at the history. For most of the World Cup's life, it had 16 teams. It grew to 24, then to 32, where it stayed for over 2 decades. Each expansion was sold as growing the global game, and each one also conveniently grew the revenue. The jump to 48 teams is the largest single increase ever, and it follows the exact same logic, just at greater scale. The format itself had to be reinvented to fit. 48 teams, 104 matches, a group stage, and an expanded knockout round. That is a tournament that runs longer, fills more days of the calendar, and produces dramatically more content to sell. The schedule is not designed only for sporting drama. It is designed to maximize the number of broadcast windows and ticketed events across the entire month. Think about what each additional match represents as a financial unit. It is a fresh television slot that can be sold to broadcasters and filled with advertising. It is a stadium full of tickets, now dynamically priced. It is another canvas for sponsor activation. 40 extra matches is not just more football. It is 40 more opportunities to monetize the same audience, the same brands, and the same global attention. The expansion also opens new markets, and that is genuine strategy. More teams means more nations with a stake in the tournament, including countries that rarely qualified before. Each of those nations brings new fans, new broadcast deals, and new commercial interest. FIFA is not only selling more matches, it is selling access to more populations, more advertising markets, and more long-term growth in regions where football is still expanding. But the sporting cost of expansion is real and worth naming. More teams means a wider gap in quality, especially in the group stage. Mismatches, blowouts, and games that exist mainly to complete the schedule. Critics argue this dilutes the prestige of qualifying and waters down the drama that made the World Cup special. The tournament gets commercially bigger and, in some matches, sportingly thinner at the same time. From a pure business standpoint, though, that dilution barely registers. A lopsided group game still sells its broadcast slot. A half-empty stadium still counts its ticket revenue. The financial value of a match does not depend on it being a classic. It depends on it existing and being sold. That is why the commercial logic of expansion is almost unstoppable, even when the sporting logic is questionable. There is also a competitive integrity question that expansion raises. More teams and more matches mean more fixtures where the incentives get strange. Teams managing fatigue, resting players, or playing for specific results to engineer a favorable path. The bigger and more complex the tournament, the more room there is for the kind of strategic gaming that fans find frustrating and that sponsors quietly tolerate. And the players bear a hidden cost of the bigger tournament. More matches spread across a continent means more travel, more fatigue, and a longer, more grueling competition layered on top of already overloaded club seasons. Player unions have warned for years about the relentless expansion of the football calendar. The 2026 format adds to that load, and the people absorbing it are the athletes whose health is the actual product. Expansion is part of a broader trend across all of professional sport. Leagues add teams and playoff rounds. Tournaments add stages. Seasons stretch longer. Almost every one of these changes is announced as a benefit to fans. And almost every one also happens to create new inventory to sell. The 2026 World Cup is the most prominent current example of a pattern that is reshaping sport from the inside. For host cities, the bigger tournament means a bigger operational and financial commitment. More matches to stage, more fans to move and secure, more days of heightened cost. The expansion that boosts FIFA's revenue simultaneously inflates the host's expenses. As with everything in this model, the upside of scale concentrates upward, while the burden of scale spreads outward across public budgets. So is a bigger World Cup better? For the global reach of the sport, arguably yes. For FIFA's revenue, unquestionably yes. For the purity of the competition, debatably no. And for the host cities and the players, it is a heavier load carried for someone else's larger payday. Bigger is not simply better or worse. It is a redistribution, dressed as growth. The next time FIFA announces an even larger tournament, and it eventually will, you will recognize the playbook. It will be framed as inclusion and growth. Underneath, it will be inventory and revenue. The 2026 World Cup, at 48 teams and 104 matches, is the clearest proof yet that in modern football, the size of the tournament is set on the balance sheet, not the pitch. It is worth asking where this ends. If 48 teams generate more revenue than 32, why not 64? The same commercial logic that justified this expansion will justify the next one and the one after that. Each will be announced as growing the game. Each will quietly add inventory. The only real limits are the patience of fans, the endurance of players, and the calendar itself. And all three are already under strain. There is also a dilution risk that compounds over time. The more the World Cup expands, the more it resembles the bloated, ever-present club competitions it once stood apart from. Scarcity is part of what made the tournament special. It happened every 4 years, and qualifying meant something. Stretch it too far, and you risk eroding the very rarity that made the rights worth $4 billion in the first place. So the expansion is a bet that more is simply more. More matches, more revenue, more reach, with the assumption that the prestige survives the bloat. It might. The World Cup is resilient and beloved. But every product that chases growth by adding volume eventually tests the loyalty of the people who valued it for what it was. FIFA is running that test in public, at the largest scale the sport has ever seen.